Have you ever walked into a doctor's office for a routine checkup and walked out more confused, more anxious, and honestly, just plain overwhelmed? You went in feeling fine. Nothing was wrong. Maybe you were just doing what you were told, keeping up with all the important screenings, just to be safe. But then, the doctor says something like, "Let's run a few more tests, just in case." And suddenly, you're spiraling. You're sent for scans, poked with needles, maybe even referred to a specialist. Next thing you know, you're lying awake at night wondering what they might find. Wondering if you should be worried. Wondering if maybe you missed something. And all of that over a test you didn't even ask for. Sound familiar? Listen, if you're over 70, or if you love someone who is, I want you to really hear this. Not every medical test is helpful, and some can actually do more harm than good. I know that goes against everything we've been taught. We grow up thinking more tests mean better care, right? Catch it early, be proactive, stay one step ahead. That's what we've been told all our lives. But what if I told you that, after a certain age, some checkups, the ones we assume are keeping us safe, might actually lead to stress, unnecessary treatments, or even permanent complications? And here's the hard part. No one really talks about this. Not openly. Not the doctors, not the hospitals, and definitely not the brochures in the waiting room. That's why this video is so important. Because today, we're going to talk about 5 common health checkups you should think twice about after 70 and why skipping them might just be the smarter, safer choice. I'm not here to scare you, I'm here to empower you. Because the truth is, real health in your later years isn't about running through a laundry list of tests. It's about knowing what matters and letting go of what doesn't. It's about keeping your independence, your peace of mind, and your dignity. And yes, sometimes that means saying no to a test. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what those 5 tests are, why they might not be worth it, and what you can do instead to truly care for your health in your 70s and beyond. And just a heads up, some of these may surprise you. They're tests we've trusted for decades. But when you hear the stories and the science behind them, you'll start to see them in a very different light. So let me ask you, have you or someone you care about ever gone through a medical test that caused more stress than peace? More harm than healing? If you're over 60 or you're caring for someone who is, drop the word health in the comments so I know you're here. You're not alone. And if you want more honest, compassionate insights about aging wisely, make sure to subscribe to Flourish After 60. This channel is all about empowering you to age with confidence, clarity, and care. Now let's talk about those 5 checkups. Let's start with one of the most common and most misunderstood types of checkups people over 70 often face: annual full-body cancer screenings. It sounds responsible, doesn't it? Proactive, like you're taking control of your health. But let me tell you a story. Margaret was 74. She was healthy, sharp, active, took walks every morning, played bridge with her friends every Thursday. She had no symptoms, nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But during a regular appointment, her doctor suggested a full-body cancer screening. Just to be safe, he said. So Margaret agreed. Why not, right? The scan picked up a tiny shadow on her lung. No symptoms, no pain, just a blurry dot on an image. But that dot changed everything. It turned out to be benign, not cancer. But by the time the biopsy was done and the surgery was scheduled, complications had already started. Her lungs weakened. Her energy never came back. And within months, Margaret, the same woman who had danced at her granddaughter's wedding, was now too tired to get out of bed for lunch. All because of a test she never needed. You see, after the age of 70, the conversation around cancer screenings changes. Here's what the science tells us. Some types of cancer grow so slowly in older adults that they'll never cause problems in your lifetime. But the treatments, surgery, radiation, chemo, they can absolutely affect your daily life, your strength, your independence. And here's the tough part. Once something shows up on a scan, even something harmless, it's hard not to go down that rabbit hole of more tests, more procedures, more fear. It's what doctors call overdiagnosis. And it often leads to overtreatment. You may have heard the phrase, better safe than sorry. But when it comes to full-body scans in your 70s and beyond, the reality is, sometimes safer means not looking for problems that don't exist. I know that goes against everything we've been told, but the goal at this stage of life isn't just to catch every tiny thing, it's to protect your quality of life, your comfort, your clarity, your time. So what should you do instead? Start by having an honest conversation with your doctor. Ask, does this test make sense for me? Given my overall health and life expectancy, is this screening likely to help or just lead to more worry? And if you're feeling healthy and symptom-free, it's perfectly okay to say no to a screening that could lead you down a path you don't need to take. Because when you're in your 70s or 80s, it's not just about adding years to your life, it's about adding life to your years. And full-body cancer screenings? They aren't always the answer. But cancer scans aren't the only checkups you might want to think twice about. Now let's talk about something that might hit close to home, especially if you or someone you love has been told to keep an eye on your bones. Number 2, frequent bone density scans. Let me tell you about George. George is 78. He's been healthy most of his life, no major falls, no broken bones, and he takes his medications as prescribed. But over the past 5 years, he's had 3 bone density scans. 3. Each time he felt that same pit in his stomach as he waited for the results. What if it's worse? What if my bones are too weak? What if I break a hip? But every time, the report came back with the same story. Slight decrease, no major change. Continue current treatment. Nothing changed except his stress levels. The reality is, bone density naturally declines as we age. That's just how the body works. But here's the important part. It happens gradually. So unless something big has changed, like a serious illness or a fall, the results of these scans usually don't affect your treatment. And here's where things get tricky. There's this belief, especially among loving, concerned family members, that more monitoring equals better care. If we check every year, we'll catch a problem early. But in truth, stable results over time don't justify repeat scans every 12 months. Think about it this way. If your bone density hasn't shifted much in the last 3 years, what are the chances it's suddenly going to drop dramatically without any warning? Very low. And yet, the anxiety that comes with these tests, the waiting, the overthinking, the pressure to fix something that hasn't even changed, can take a real toll on your peace of mind. Here's a more balanced approach. Unless you've had a recent fracture, started a new medication, or gone through a major health event like cancer treatment, spreading these scans out to every 3-5 years or even stopping entirely might be the healthier, less stressful path. And if you're already being treated for osteoporosis, your doctor is probably managing your risk through medication and lifestyle. The scan becomes a checkmark, not a game changer. So the next time your doctor suggests another bone scan, pause. Ask, has anything changed since my last one? Will this really give us new information or just more worry? Because the goal isn't to chase numbers on a screen. The goal is to stay strong, steady, and supported in your everyday life. And now, let's move on to a checkup that might really surprise you. It's one many of us grew up believing was essential for early detection. But after 70, it might be doing more harm than good. Number 3, prostate cancer screenings, specifically the PSA test. You might not know this, but the PSA test has caused more confusion and quiet suffering than almost any other routine screening for older men. Let me paint a picture. Harold was 76, a retired school principal, proud grandfather of 5, still played golf once a week and volunteered at the library every Tuesday. He went in for his annual physical, nothing felt off, no pain, no urinary problems. But his doctor offered a PSA test. Just to keep an eye on things, they said. Harold figured, why not? What's the harm? His PSA came back slightly elevated, not sky high, just a little outside the normal range. That one number kicked off a chain reaction. First came a follow-up, then a biopsy, then surgery to remove the prostate, because, as his doctor put it, we can't be too careful. Harold survived the surgery, but what followed was something he never expected. Incontinence, erectile dysfunction, and a quiet, growing sense that something had been taken from him that he couldn't get back. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Prostate cancer usually grows very slowly. Especially in older men, it's often so slow that it'll never cause symptoms and certainly not death. In fact, many men pass away with prostate cancer, not because of it. So what's the point of catching something that might never cause harm? That's where PSA tests get tricky. They can detect small, low-risk tumors. But once a tumor is found, most men feel compelled to act, to treat, to remove, to do something, even if that treatment leaves them with lifelong complications. And here's something most folks never hear. Major medical boards, including the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, actually recommend against routine PSA screening after age 70, unless you have symptoms or a very high risk. But still, many older men get tested every year. Why? Because no one wants to feel like they're ignoring a ticking time bomb. Because early detection has been drilled into our heads for decades. Because we think more testing means better protection. But here's the truth. In your 70s and beyond, it's not about chasing numbers, it's about protecting your quality of life. If your PSA levels have been stable, if you're feeling well, if you're not showing symptoms like trouble urinating, pain, or blood in the urine, then you may not need to keep checking every year. Instead, you can have a different kind of conversation with your doctor. One that starts with, will this test change anything for me? Is the risk of treatment worth the potential gain? Because at this stage of life, the real risk isn't the cancer that may never grow. It's the treatment that may steal something precious from your daily life, your comfort, your dignity, your sense of ease. And that's something worth protecting. Now let's move on to the next checkup. It involves machines, wires, and flashing screens. It feels high-tech, advanced, maybe even life-saving. But in many cases, it's not. Number 4, routine heart stress tests when you have no symptoms. Let me tell you about Eleanor. She was 79, lively, independent, sharp as a tack. She walked every morning, gardened on weekends, and never missed her Sunday church group. No chest pain, no shortness of breath, no dizziness. Just a regular checkup with a new doctor. This new doctor glanced at her age and said, "Let's do a precautionary stress test just to be safe." Eleanor hesitated. "I feel fine," she said. But the word heart is powerful. It sticks in your chest. It plants a seed of worry. So she agreed. The test? Inconclusive. Which led to a follow-up test. That one showed a mild irregularity. And before Eleanor even had time to catch her breath, she was on the table getting a stent placed in an artery that wasn't even blocked enough to matter. A week later, she had complications from the blood thinners. She became tired, bruised easily, lost her confidence to walk on her own. Her vibrant routine? Gone. Just like that? All because of a test she didn't need. Now here's what most people don't know. Heart stress tests are powerful tools, but only when used at the right time. They're designed to evaluate symptoms: chest pain, breathlessness, fatigue that shows up with exertion. But if you're not having symptoms, the chance of finding something meaningful is slim. What's more likely? A false positive. The machine might detect something abnormal that's not dangerous or not even real. But once it's found, the cascade begins. Angiograms, catheters, stents, maybe even surgery. And here's the kicker. Studies have shown that in people over 70 with no symptoms, routine heart stress testing doesn't reduce heart attacks, it doesn't extend life. But it does increase unnecessary procedures and hospital visits. So why do these tests still get recommended? Because we're trained to think, better to be safe than sorry. We fear the what-ifs, but we rarely think about the then what's. Like, what happens after the test? What's the cost? Not just in money, but in energy, in confidence, in peace of mind. Now, does that mean you should ignore your heart health? Absolutely not. But there's a difference between care and overcare. If you're in your 70s or 80s and feeling well, no tightness, no pressure, no pain when you walk, then the best thing you can do is focus on what truly matters. Keeping your blood pressure in check, managing your cholesterol, staying active and eating well, listening to your body, not just to the machines, because your heart isn't just a muscle, it's a storyteller. It speaks through how you feel, not always through numbers on a screen. So next time someone suggests a heart stress test, just to be cautious, pause. Ask the question, do I actually have symptoms? Will this test change my treatment, or just create new worries. Because sometimes the most heart-smart decision is simply choosing to live fully and wisely without chasing what isn't there. And now let's turn to one more checkup. It's routine, common. It seems like a simple way to stay ahead of a problem. But for many people over 70, it leads down a road they wish they'd never taken. Number 5. Routine colonoscopies after age 75. I want to introduce you to Frank. Frank was 78, a retired firefighter. Strong, proud, used to handling anything life threw his way. His doctor recommended a just-to-be-safe colonoscopy. He'd had one about 10 years ago that came back completely clear. No polyps, no concerns. Still, Frank agreed. He'd done it before, he figured he could handle it again. But what no one prepared him for was the prep. That part alone was rough. The powerful laxatives left him weak and severely dehydrated. He felt dizzy, nauseated, and had to cancel his weekly lunch with friends, something he never missed. Then came the procedure. It seemed routine at first, but afterward he started feeling sharp pain in his abdomen. Turned out, the scope had caused a microperforation, a small tear in his colon wall. He ended up in the hospital for 3 days. And guess what? They found nothing. No cancer, no polyps, no reason he needed the test in the first place. It shook him. Not just physically, but emotionally. He went in for a routine test and left feeling like he'd aged 10 years in a week. And Frank's story isn't rare. Here's what most people don't realize. After age 75, the risks of colonoscopy start to outweigh the benefits, especially if you've had normal results in the past. Let's break that down. Colonoscopies are incredibly useful in your 50s and 60s. That's when polyps grow the most. That's when early detection can truly make a difference. But by your late 70s or early 80s, the chance of finding a life-threatening cancer is much lower, especially if past screenings were clear. What does go up? The risk of complications. Older adults are more likely to experience tears in the colon wall, reactions to anesthesia, severe dehydration, and even internal bleeding. And the kicker? Even if a small polyp is found, it might be so slow-growing that it would never become dangerous in your lifetime. Yet many older adults say yes to another colonoscopy simply because they always have. I've done it every 10 years. My doctor just scheduled it again. My insurance still covers it. But here's the truth. The guidelines change as we age for a reason. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force and other expert panels recommend stopping routine colonoscopies after 75 for most people, especially if you've had normal results and no symptoms. So what should you do instead? Talk to your doctor about your specific risk. Ask, given my past screenings, do I really need this again? Is there a less invasive test we can use if something seems off? There are stool-based tests that can screen for colon cancer without the prep, the anesthesia, or the risk. They're not perfect, but for many people in their 70s and 80s, they're more than enough. Because the goal isn't to do every test forever. The goal is to be thoughtful, to weigh the benefit and the burden, to protect your health, yes, but also your energy, your comfort, your time. Because your later years shouldn't be spent recovering from complications of a test that didn't need to happen. They should be filled with moments that matter. Meals with friends, quiet mornings, laughter, love. So if you've had a clean colonoscopy in your 60s or early 70s, you may not need another. And that's not neglect, that's wisdom. Now, let's take a step back. Because when we look at all these checkups together, bone scans, PSA tests, heart stress tests, colonoscopies, it's not just about tests. It's about a much deeper question. How do we age with confidence and peace of mind, without being pulled into a medical system that sometimes forgets when enough is enough? Let's talk about that. Seeing our bodies change is tough, and it's even tougher when it feels like we're constantly being poked, scanned, or tested. Not because we're unwell, but because that's just the way things have always been done. You sit in that doctor's office, you hear the same words. Just a precaution. Let's be safe. Better to catch it early. And you want to do the right thing. Of course you do. You've spent your life looking after others. Now you're trying to look after yourself. But somewhere along the way, you start to wonder, are these tests truly helping, or are they slowly stealing your sense of peace? Because every test carries something else with it. A waiting period, a sleepless night, a ripple of fear. And if the test leads to a false alarm, it's not just your body that pays the price, it's your spirit. But here's the truth you rarely hear. Aging wisely isn't about doing everything possible. It's about doing what's necessary, what's meaningful, what supports your well-being, not just your medical record. You are not a checklist. You are not a number on a chart. You are a whole person with history, intuition, wisdom, and the right to ask, do I really need this? So here's what I encourage you to do right now. Just take a moment, think about your current health routine. What checkups are you doing because someone said to? Which ones feel right and which ones feel more like pressure or habit? You don't have to make big changes overnight, but asking the question, that's the beginning of true self-care. Because the goal of growing older isn't to chase perfection. It's to protect what matters most. Your comfort, your clarity, your dignity. You deserve to spend your later years with confidence, with calm, not jumping from test to test, wondering what's next. But waking up each day feeling informed, grounded, and empowered. And that's what we're doing here, together. That's how we flourish after 60. Let's go over what we learned today, because these 5 checkups often seem harmless, but knowing when to say no can be life-changing. 1. Full-body cancer scans. Often overused and misleading, they can lead to unnecessary fear and treatments. 2. Frequent bone density tests. Repeating them too often doesn't help and can lead to unneeded medication. 3. PSA tests for prostate cancer. Especially in older men, they're more likely to cause anxiety and overtreatment than save lives. 4. Routine heart stress tests without symptoms. If your heart feels fine, the test might cause more trouble than it prevents. 5. Colonoscopies after 75. When done out of routine instead of need, they carry risks that might outweigh any benefits. Each of these deserves a second look, not because they're always bad, but because your context matters. Your health, your history, your goals. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you or someone you care for ever had a test that led to more stress than benefit? What did you learn from that experience? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one, and you never know who you might help by speaking up. And if this video opened your eyes, even just a little, subscribe to Flourish After 60. We're building a community here, a place where we can talk honestly about aging with grace, power, and wisdom. Because your 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, they're not the end of your story. They're a new chapter full of possibility, clarity, and strength. And I am so glad you're writing that chapter with us. Thank you for spending your time here with me today. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. And you are absolutely still flourishing. We'll see you in the next one.